Mining. A lot of people know about mining, but they just don't seem to realize how utterly important it is in our life. Samuel, or most people call him Sam, was a miner. And Sam didn't exactly like his job. I mean, mining is not exactly the most exciting thing ever, and definitely not the most fun of all jobs there is. Now, that doesn't mean that it was completely a waste of time. He did have fun with his friends every once in a while, and he did make some pretty cool discoveries. But all Sam ever really wants, at the moment, is to be promoted to a higher part of mining. Now, he'd been in his job for quite a while, and he never really went up a level or anything. In fact, his manager had been in the job for an entire 3 years less than he had. And he didn't really think that was a great thing at all. And as Sam trudged through one of the deepest mining shafts that they had, he was thinking of a way that he could possibly get a promotion. So, what he decided to do is to find something new, something that will get him enough attention that he could be seen by one of his bosses or something as some sort of hero in the mine. And that's what he was doing right now. I don't know. Is this a good idea? Maybe the manager might think trying to do something risky to get some sort of promotion, and he might not agree. Well, no matter. He started to head down one of the most neglected and unused mine shafts that he knew of. Not a lot of people come down here, so maybe I'll find something that is worth finding. To the left, he saw a big mass of stone that had been carved through the earth, and to his right was exactly the same thing. Nothing spectacular, nothing awesome, just rocks. He was hoping maybe somebody had missed, I don't know, a chunk of diamond or something. Of course not. But what else is he gonna do? Suddenly, as he started... he saw in front of him that the cave went into two directions. There was a fork in the road, or rail. He didn't remember which way to go. He kind of had an idea in his mind of where he wanted to be, but he didn't remember if he should take a left turn or a right turn here. Well, I guess I'll choose left. He started to walk the left way, and as he walked through the tunnels, he noticed that his light, of course he was wearing a mining helmet, seemed to go a little bit darker here, probably because it was running out of batteries. I swear I charged it last night, he said, but nevertheless, it did get darker. Not at all in some frightening way, and not at all in some sort of ghostly way, I guess. You see, Sam is not the paranormal type. He doesn't really believe in ghosts, and he's never really had a reason to. Most of his friends don't ever talk about things like that, and being non-religious as he is, he never has time to think of something like that. But when he stared at the very end of this tunnel, he noticed that at the very end, there seemed to be some sort of hole. Huh? Wouldn't they investigate something like this if they saw it? He said. And he started to turn back around and walk towards the end. He reached out his hand, a gloved hand, of course. You never want to not wear gloves in a mine. And he felt at the hole. It seemed this hole led to somewhere. And somewhere he had no idea of. Maybe they had accidentally dug into another one of their other tunnels, he thought. Though, that probably wasn't the case, because the area around this hole was covered in dirt. And you never, ever, ever, when you're mining, dig into dirt. It's one of the worst ideas you can possibly have, because digging into dirt, of course, might cause some sort of cave-in or something. It's not the most reliable thing to have above your head. I wonder where it leads to, said Sam. And then he thought, maybe on the other side of this dirt there's something that would be exciting and might give me a promotion. I wonder why they haven't dug it out all the way, at least. Who leaves just a small little hole in a wall? I mean, come on. So, Sam took out his pickaxe, which he had strapped to his belt. It was a very small pickaxe, and started to chip away at this little hole to see what was on the other side. When he did, and the hole started to widen, he noticed it led to some place that didn't really look like a tunnel that they had made. A cave, perhaps? He started to dig a little more, and once he got the hole big enough he could stick his head through, he did. And what he saw was just completely confusing. Upon sticking his head through the hole, he saw that this was definitely not a man-made tunnel. This was a cave. Now, in all of his mining career, the biggest cave that Sam had ever seen was about a 3 by 3 foot hole that was filled with air. Not anything like something you could climb into, but the cave that was before him was huge. It opened into a room, and in this room, he saw that the walls, the ground, the ceiling above him was all made of dirt. Hardened dirt, of course, but dirt nonetheless. The dirt was also a color that he'd never seen before. It was unidentifiable. It was strange. So immediately realizing that this could somehow get him a promotion, I mean, an entirely new cave that they hadn't discovered could be huge. And he was certain that they hadn't found it yet, because if anybody had found a cave like this, he would certainly know about it. He tried to crawl through the hole, after making it a little bigger, of course, and got to his hands and knees, and then eventually crawled to his feet. And when he did, he realized that this cave was beautiful. Up above him were crystals. Crystals slightly purple, but at the same time green, were completely covering most of the ceiling. And they seemed to be dripping some sort of liquid. It was kind of clear, kind of purple. And it would fall from the tips of the crystals down into a small pool in the center of the room, which was filled with the purplish, strange colored liquid. He didn't know how to describe it. It was just strange colored. That's what he thought in his mind, at least. What a strange place. He started to walk forward, and passing the pool, he got to the end of the tunnel. The whole time he was looking around, amazed by the mixture of colors in this room. When he got to the end of the room, he looked forward and saw that there was a tunnel that went down out of this room into something he couldn't really see. You see, mining helmets have a light at the very top of the helmet, which makes it so that you can see shadows that you normally wouldn't have to deal with if the room was completely lit. The shadows were strange, though. Every single thing he looked at had kind of a outline of a shadow around it. It kind of messed with his head. And in the corners of his vision, he always thought he could see things that were strange. And when he turned his head to look at them, of course, he just realized that they were shadows. So when he looked down the tunnel, he couldn't see what was at the end of it, because at the very end it just looked like a pool of shadows. You'd have to go down there to see what it was. He started to walk down the tunnel. And halfway down, he realized that he could kind of see the room ahead of him. It seemed to be a dirt room. Of course, the ground and the dirt around him was that color that he just couldn't put his finger on. He was reaching the very bottom of the tunnel, and he could see most of the room now, everything just until the very end. It was, indeed, a completely empty chasm. It just was completely empty. There weren't stalagmites coming up. It was just flat, smooth dirt of that strange, unusual color. He got to the bottom of the tunnel, and he saw, at the very end of the room, there stood a person. But not just a person, it was a girl. A girl wearing a blue dress and had long black hair. She stood there, swaying her arms side to side. Sam was completely stunned. Then he started to smell something as he watched this girl. It was an earthy, thick smell. He started to tremble. Why was there a girl in this tunnel? He couldn't see her face. It was shrouded in darkness from his mining helmet's light. But she just continued to stand there, swaying back and forth, her arms swaying by her sides. She just stood there staring at him. What? Said Sam. Suddenly the girl moved her head up and stared at him, right into his eyes. Her eyes, though, were just pits of pure white light. She had no pupils. She had no iris. It was just blank, pure white. She stared at him. He was completely frozen now. The smell started to grow stronger. He could hear some sort of growing, deafening, humming sound that seemed to shake him to his core. The girl just continued to stare at him blankly, slowly rocking back and forth, arms swaying at her side. Then suddenly, the girl erupted, and red was splashed everywhere around him. His mining helmet was covered in some sort of liquid that blinded the entire area around him. He was thrown back against the ground, his body completely covered in something. He had no idea what it was, but when he wiped his helmet and brought light around him, he saw that it was blood. The girl was gone, but where she stood, the ground was covered in it. The dirt that used to be an unusual color had finally gained an actual color that he could identify. And it was red. Sam slowly got to his feet, completely shaking. He stood up. And tried to wipe his arms clean of the putrid liquid. I should get out of here, he thought. Then he realized that to the right of the cavern, there was a tunnel that went up. And even with his light on, he could tell that another light was coming from that tunnel. There was something illuminating that tunnel by itself without his light from his helmet. He had to go and check it out. Regaining his balance finally, he started to walk across the tunnel. His feet squished against the soft, disgusting liquid that mixed with the dirt. He finally got to the entrance of the tunnel, completely disgusted. But he knew that if there was something that was worth getting a promotion, it was going to be up at this end of this tunnel. He could just feel it. Something was dragging him in. He didn't know what it was, but it was strong. He started to head up the tunnel, finally being gone of that gross liquid on the ground. And he walked up. And once he got to the top, his lantern finally being able to illuminate what's ahead of him, he saw another room. But this time, the cave did have stalactites and stalagmites, and the dirt was, instead of being that unusual color, it seemed to be more tinted blue. Now, this is when he got a little nervous, because it made no dang sense. At the end of this cave, there was something golden. It was gold. He rushed towards it. But then he realized this wasn't just a nugget of gold in the wall at the other side of the cave. It was shaped into something. That isn't right, he thought. There's no way. Completely forgetting about what his things he experienced in the last few minutes, he grabbed the gold and pulled it out. If this was actual gold, he was getting a promotion. Pulling it out of the cave wall, though, made him realize exactly what this thing really was. It was a big chunk of gold in the shape of a heart. It was smooth, but yet it was a little lumpy like gold is. But around the edges and sides of this heart, the gold was kind of pushed in. But it was huge. It was a big chunk of gold. It was heavy. And it was solid as far as he knew. I've got to return. Show this to my managers. Show this to my boss. I could finally get a promotion, a place of power in this dang job, he thought. He turned around and started to walk out the cave, admiring the view around him of this bluish dirt that seemed to just illuminate itself somehow. He walked down the cave tunnel, heading back to the entrance that he had made himself. And when he got to the very bottom of the tunnel, he realized the liquid, it was gone. Nothing covered the ground anymore other than that dirt, that strange colored dirt. And then he realized that the stuff that covered him a few seconds before was completely gone. He hadn't even noticed as he had grabbed that gold heart. It must have disappeared. This is too weird. I gotta get out of here. He turned left and started to walk through the room. Once he got to the bottom of the tunnel that went up to the exit, he looked up, his lantern barely illuminating anything. But he thought he saw something flash as he looked up into the tunnel. Something white. Whatever. He started to walk up the tunnel, looking down at this newly found piece of gold. He admired it for a few seconds walking up, and then he looked up. And to his horror, it was her. Again. She stood at the very top of the tunnel, gazing down at her feet. She was swaying back and forth, her arms slowly rocking, and she lifted her left arm. Still, her face shrouded in her hair and darkness. She held in her left hand something that shined in the light of his helmet. Suddenly, her head rocketed upward and stared directly at him. He started to shake again. The girl was just utterly terrifying. Her blue dress slowly moved in the non-existent breeze. Her feet were completely bare and dug into the ground. The thing in her hand glinted the light, and it slowly started to grow. It started to blind Sam. He wanted to close his eyes, but he didn't want to take his eyes off of this girl. She seemed so dangerous, but yet so calm. He started to hear something far, far away. His eyes still completely still on the girl, unblinking. The sound started to get louder and louder and louder. It was a heartbeat. A heartbeat, but it was deafening. The girl stood there still, swaying back and forth, her left arm raised slightly, holding the gold locket that slowly got brighter and brighter and brighter until Sam had to close his eyes. She was gone. As soon as he opened his eyes, she vanished. I gotta get out of here. I gotta go. He shook himself a little bit and then booked it up the tunnel, his feet slamming against the dirt of that unusual color. He passed the pool, narrowly missing it, but he didn't want to get wet by whatever that liquid was. He finally got to the end of the cave. He saw his hole that he had made himself through the dirt of that strange color, and he jumped through it, getting stuck a little bit, but finally crawling out of it. He got to his feet, still holding the gold heart. He turned and started to run through the man-made tunnel, which slowly turned back into stone. He ran He ran. He ran, and he finally was about to get to the fork in the road. He could see it ahead of him, even in the dark shadows that seemed to drive him crazy. And when he finally saw the end of the tunnel, it was her. The girl stood there in the blue dress, her black hair covering most of her face. Some winds that didn't exist made her rock back and forth, back and forth. In her hand, she held something that glinted in the light. But this time, Sam could finally make out what it was. It was a golden, heart-shaped locket, almost identical to the heart that he was holding in his hand right now, but much smaller. She held the locket up a little bit, her other hand swing slightly back and forth, and she looked at him, her eyes seeming to light up the entire cave around them. She stopped swaying back and forth, still staring at him, his heart pumping so loud, until he realized that that wasn't his heart. The sound had returned. Along with that smell, it made it hard for him to breathe. Breathing in that thick, earthy scent. "Leave me alone," said Sam. The girl didn't seem to notice. And then, her right hand lifted. The locket still in her left, and it went past her shoulder, past her head, and she extended a finger and reached for the ceiling and touched it. What? They never found his body, though they did find his helmet, with the light bulb completely missing. Next to that, they found a golden locket that seemed to have a picture of a girl far off in the distance. Trees and grass surrounding her. She was wearing a blue dress and had long black hair that covered her face. Other than that, they didn't find much at all, though they did find his left shoe. They assumed it was his. The shoe was covered in some sort of dirt of some strange, unusual color.